Now.
Hello.
Hello, Alexandra.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm honoured that you've invited me on your show to be interviewed. So thank you for that.
We've switched roles a bit, haven't we?
No, you can ask me all the difficult questions, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. Not quite as professional as you. I've got my paper and my pen with my questions written down, but hey-ho.
Every winner was once a beginner.
Definitely.
And I'm not perfect, that's for sure. So anyway.
you won't believe that when you watch it recorded, but
well, I'm not going to watch this back. I don't like looking at myself, but you should do, really. It's the best way of learning, looking back at recordings and learning from what you see. But it's not easy.
It's the voice for me.
Yeah.
I don't mind watching, but it's listening to my own voice.
Yeah. Interesting, that, isn't it? It's interesting because the way you sound to yourself is actually different to the way that you sound to everybody else because of where your ears are. I think it's but
crazy.
So did you listen to your interview, the one that I did with you? Have you listened back to it?
I listened to the first sort of minute, and then I was like, oh no, because I didn't want to sort of watch it and think, oh God, I wish I didn't say that. So people have responded very well to it. So I thought, I'll just let it be.
You're a natural. Yeah. Right.
Are you ready? You ready for your questions?
Hit me with it. Yeah.
Okay, so my first question is, had you heard of cystic fibrosis before I was born?
Oh, goodness gracious, that's a great question, Alex. Right, okay, so obviously for people that have probably not watched us before, cystic fibrosis is a disease that you're dealing with at the moment. So a lot of people may not be aware of that, but no, it's a great question, Alex. I was aware of it, but people only ever know about the physiotherapy, the patting. Whenever you ask people about cystic fibrosis, they always go, "Oh, is that the one where they?" So I was obviously aware of it from somewhere, but I've got no idea where I was aware of it from, and only from the perspective of the physio, which is only one small part of cystic fibrosis. It's a minor part of it, isn't it? So the answer is yes, but I only knew it from the perspective of the physiotherapy. But wow, there's so much more involved in that disease than just physio, isn't there, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny how little people know and how many people don't know about it, even though it's such a common condition. There's a lot of people with it. It's funny how little people know, unless you know someone directly.
Yeah.
People don't know that much about it.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And even those of us that know quite a lot about it, I mean, I don't know everything, but I mean, there are so many layers to it. There are so many complexities to it, aren't there? I think, who would have thought diabetes was a part of the cystic fibrosis kind of challenge, but it is, so, yeah. So, and I forget how many people there are in the UK with it, Alex. Is it about 8,000 or something, 10,000?
I think it's about 10. Right. About 10,000. I think there's 70,000 across the world.
Right. Okay.
It's quite an exclusive club, really, isn't it?
It is indeed. That's right. That's one way of looking at it. That's the positive way of looking at it, Alex, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's funny how little I know about it, really, even though I've had it for 25 years. Up until starting the modulators, I had no idea that one of the core problems with cystic fibrosis is salt passing through the body.
Yeah.
So the drugs that I'm on now correct that problem, but I had no idea that was why CF is such a bad problem. It's just the salt passing through that causes so many problems.
Yeah. It's interesting because
I
suppose when you were born, sorry, darling.
Always learning to be done.
Yeah, well, there is. That's right, in life and to do with CF as well. Yeah, when you were born, I remember. Because I'm a dad that likes to hug and cuddle, when you've got a little creature like you as a tiny little thing, and I always remember kissing you and thinking, wow, you were very, very salty. This was before you were diagnosed.
Yeah.
But obviously one of the signs of cystic fibrosis is high salt content, and you generally tend to be quite salty, don't you, to the taste, So yeah, at that point I'd got no idea of the connection between cystic fibrosis and salt content. But obviously now we know. Yeah. I think the other thing that is interesting is when you're facing something like that as a dad, you kind of want to know about it, but then you don't want to know about it, because you kind of don't want to know what the kind of prognosis is. But so there's a lot of fear in researching something which is obviously on the internet and frightening yourself. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, really. But yeah.
Well, you're sort of leading into my next question there. So my next one was, how did you feel when I first got diagnosed?
Wow, Alex, that is a really, it's the most difficult moment of my life, because when you're so excited as a dad, and I think I'm not a bad dad, but and obviously Ben was already born, so we had Ben. Ben was probably about 12 months, 18 months at the time, so I knew how great it was to be a dad. And even before Ben was born, I was absolutely over the moon at the idea of being a dad. And I remember, this is not just about you; it's about Ben a little bit, but just to highlight how important being a dad is to me. I mean, I remember we used to go out socially. Mum couldn't drink, I could drink, and I was just so proud of the fact that your mum was pregnant, and to the point of saying, that's my, I'm sure that's my son there, that's my son. I was just way over the top, so excited, so proud. Possibly because I've come from a big family and I value that. Yeah. So how did I feel when I found out? It was kind of maybe about 10 days into you being born that we kind of knew something wasn't quite right. You weren't keeping your food down, and you weren't well, and sometimes the mother's instinct, a mum knows when her child's not well. So we got to a point where we kind of took you into hospital. I think it was in an ambulance, I think, from memory. And then they were doing the tests and very quickly established that it was something called meconium, which is bowel blockage, which again is very common for babies with cystic fibrosis. And I thought, well, that's just a bowel blockage, that's fine. They'll clear the bowel blockage, it'll be fine, but it's just that moment when they took us. I think it was in an evening. We were both tired, and they took us into a really not particularly well lit room, and there was a nurse and a doctor. And it's just one of those moments when your heart sinks. Very, very emotional. I'm not a very emotional person naturally, but I was very, very upset by it, and obviously so was your mum. There's a nurse with us and a doctor, and it just shatters your whole kind of. It shatters you. It really does. In that moment, because you want your child to be perfect. You want your child to be safe. You want to protect your child, and when you feel like there's something that's going to threaten the kind of life of your child, and certainly shorten the life of your child, it's just very hard to digest. Obviously, you do over time. You come to terms with it, and I mean, look at you now. I mean, God, I could not be prouder of you and Ben. Because it's not just about you, it's about Ben, and what Ben's had to deal with, when I say put up with, I mean deal with, because what that's meant is that a lot of the limelight has been on you because you've had to have the care and the kind of focus and the attention. And I mean, Ben's dealt with that very, very well, because somebody without Ben's relaxed personality might have found that a challenge. So, I'm always very mindful of making sure the focus is shared, and is equally balanced, even though you've got the kind of the really awful disease, it's not easy for Ben either, because of, obviously he feels it as well. He doesn't say it very often, does he? But he doesn't, but he loves you, and I'm sure he worries about you, even though he may not show it. Yeah. So really difficult moment. But there are people that I know that have. I always think there's always somebody in a worse situation than us, and there are people we know that have had cystic fibrosis, and people that sadly are not around anymore. So I still consider us lucky.
Yeah, definitely. The future, I mean, the future's looking bright now, just with all the new drugs. The doctors actually said to me the other day that children born today with CF will live an absolutely normal life, and in years to come, CF won't be seen as such a destroying disease, because people will start on new medication and they will just live normally. Because I know when I was born, I think my mum and both you have said that it was a childhood disease, that it wasn't, people didn't live to be an adult when I was born.
Yeah.
And here 26 years later, and there's people living till 50 and 60 now, which is crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah, it is. Yeah. We think we were told there might be a cure within 5 years, or something like a cure within 5 years. So, when a doctor tells you that, and maybe they shouldn't say that, you're hanging on to that number, that 5 years. And 26 years down the line, obviously things are much, much better, aren't they? But
Yeah, I'm very mindful of talking about the new drug to people who have got CF as well, because I've got a friend, never met obviously with CF, but she she started on the new drug, but her side effects are too much. She can't deal with the side effects. And this is of a drug that is a miracle for me. And she's had a baby last year as well. And her body just can't deal with the side effects. So these new drugs are amazing, but I'm so mindful that they don't work for everybody. For me, it's been an absolute godsend. But it's very hard, and for people that have lost people, especially in the last few years, that if their loved one could have just held on and the new drugs could have given them the life back. It's very hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I think your strategy or our strategy has always been, keep yourself as well as you possibly can. Just keep the lung function as good as you can. So, then you're in with a chance, aren't you? That's, we've got to give a lot of credit to your mum for that as well, because your mum was the main carer for you, I think, and she was the one that didn't, focused her life on you, the physio, the hospital visits and all that kind of stuff. So without her input, you probably wouldn't have been as well as you are now. So
yeah, definitely. Definitely. So my next question is, what did the doctors tell you about CF? Can you remember how they described it, what they sort of predicted the future would be like for a child with CF?
Right. Okay. So I suppose at the time, they probably don't want to bombard you with too much information, because whatever they say, you're not going to absorb it. As soon as they say, Alex has got cystic fibrosis, which we didn't really understand what that was. They just gave us a very high level. It's a genetic deficiency. It can be managed, but it's a very difficult disease, to manage. So they didn't really give us a lot more than that, Alex, to be honest, because whatever they'd said, we wouldn't have absorbed it, But what they did they did give us the opportunity to kind of absorb it, and then come back and ask questions further down the line, So I think we had a second meeting with the consultant and the nurse, where we could, and obviously what you do is you research, don't you? You figure out what it is, And the one thing you look at is life expectancy, and life expectancy depends on where you are on the spectrum, but 30, 40, and just I don't know. So I knew that when we went into the second meeting with the kind of doctors, it's very, very hard to contemplate the fact that you as a dad might outlive your own child. I mean, that is just such a hard thing for a dad to kind of even contemplate, because as a dad, all you want to do is protect your kids. As a parent, all you want to do is protect your kids, keep them safe, make sure they're happy. That's just a natural instinct.
Yeah.
And to know that you have a child that's got a disease that you have no control over, there's nothing you can do about it other than kind of keep you as well as possible and give you the best life possible. That's all you can do. So that was the thing that stood out for me, was the life expectancy. 30, 40. I mean, that's just, it's half a lifetime, isn't it? Really, I think, and that's not fair. And then you start feeling why us? Why has it happened to us? And then you kind of, I didn't particularly blame myself, but there's an element of, part of it's our fault because our genes aren't right. And, so we've created Alex's problem, and it's just interesting how then the family react to it, because, certain members of the family were starting to wonder, because the gene comes down both sides of the family.
Yeah.
So certain members of the family were starting to look at their history and who was ill and yeah, so that doesn't serve anybody, but it's just how you feel at the time. So the initial kind of feeling is shock. You can't absorb any more information, so there's a limit to what they tell you. But then eventually you can go back and ask the questions. But by that time, you've done all the research. You've been online. You've what we all do. So, but the doctors were really good and very empathetic. But that doesn't help you in terms of how you feel.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've struggled with as well, which you would, unless you're going through it, you sort of never would think about, but I struggled a lot with feeling guilty that I might die before my family.
Oh, wow.
Which is a really odd thing, because why would you feel guilty about dying? But I used to think a lot, I mean, not as much now with the new drugs, but I used to think a lot about, well, what will my mum do? What will my dad do when I'm not here? And how will they continue their lives? And I mean, God, we've got friends, Michelle and Chris, and they're Sophie and Georgia, and they have got on with their lives, but I don't think you would ever get over that. So I struggled a lot with feeling guilty that might happen.
Yeah.
which is not, it's not something that anybody should feel guilty about because it's out of your control. But yeah, it's just something that I don't think you realize mentally how hard it is to deal with the condition, because it's a physical condition, but there's a lot more mental sort of things that come with it.
Interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's really interesting. You know, as if you haven't got enough to deal with, you know, and you're dealing with guilt, feeling how we're going to feel when you're not around. I mean, my goodness, Alex, I mean, it's just, you know, it's incredible, isn't it, really, how the mind works. And I just wonder whether, is there as much support on the mental challenges that cystic fibrosis presents compared to the physical challenges? I don't know. I mean, it feels to me as though maybe that's quite right. There's more on the physical side, dealing with than the mindset side of it. What would you say?
100%, 100%. I mean, I've in the past spoken to a psychologist.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say that. It's something that helped me along the way, but it wasn't really about, I had quite a lot of anxiety at one point, and anxiety at doing normal things. So going to the supermarket, because I think when you're ill, you think that other people can see that you're ill, even though they can't. I mean, you can't tell that I'm ill from looking at me. But the psychologist sort of didn't help with the deep-rooted problems that CS caused, and the worry, and what happens when I get sicker, and if I have children, what happens when I'm gone, and even sort of finding love and finding a partner. I've always felt guilty that my partner's one day going to have to be without me. And it takes a very, very specific, strong person to be able to go into a relationship knowing that they could potentially have to care for their partner. It really takes a very special person, and I'm lucky that I've found James, and James is my rock, and I can let all my emotion out to James. But yeah, it's sort of, it affects so many aspects, and it really does take a special person to sort of step in and say, I'm prepared for that. I can deal with that, and I can help you through it, because it's, nobody wants to sign up to sort of lose the partner. I mean, it happens every day, doesn't it? People don't know the future. But it's hard thing to sort of take on, I think.
Yeah, it is. One thing you just said there, Alex, which was interesting, was, and I know you've said this to me before, is some days that I just want to be normal, you know, and I know we've talked about this in the past where, I mean, you've had your moments when you've been out and parties, haven't you? Which, you know, you're every teenager, you know, coming in at 3 o'clock, going down to the whatever the club was called in Dewsbury.
Squash club.
But that was your opportunity to just blend in with the rest of your friends, and nobody knows any different, you know. And I never thought about that. I never thought how important it was for you just to feel normal, to not, you know. But I know you've said that's a desire you've had, isn't it? That desire just to fit in, just for a night, just for a day, just for, do you know what I mean? Never thought about it, you know. Interesting.
Yeah. It's, I don't know where that even came from, but just on a Saturday night when I used to go out, nobody could tell. And I mean, when I cough in public, people look. And I've always been one for, I don't like people to know that I'm sick, because people look at you a different way. And sometimes it's in a good way, and they think, wow, that person's going on. But a lot of it's sympathy, and I don't want sympathy.
No.
It's been a challenge in life, but I wouldn't change it, because it's brought me to where I am. It's given me experiences that I would have never had. And I appreciate the little things, because God, when I'm in hospital for a month, just coming home and being at home with my cats and James, having my own cooked food and my own bathroom, my own shower, it really, you appreciate the little things. And like now, me and James are engaged, and getting married is something, God, I never thought that I'd reach an age where that'd be a possibility. So I think people do, and people do take things for granted. But unless you're in sort of a position where them things are compromised, you sort of don't.
It's all right.
Yeah, you don't realise.
You're so right, Alex. You are so right. Sometimes it takes almost a trigger, a shock, or something that happens to you or somebody close to you to give you that reality check. Wow, you know. And I know I go on about this, but one of my biggest focuses is time. You know, how precious time is, and how short life is. And 4,000 weeks. That's all we have from start to finish. And I know I say it a lot, but because of what's happened to you, you know, and because what we're facing, and, you know, I've had my moments where kind of my brushes with death in the past, but this is not about me, it's about you. But it makes you realise, you know, every day is a bonus, you know, and
yeah,
you've probably got more of an appreciation for how valuable every day is than most people around you, because, you know, it is precious for you, isn't it?
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. We've sort of touched on this a little bit, but my next question is, we're sort of going back on the up now. I know there's been some serious questions. These are a few more positive ones. What did you imagine my future to be like? Obviously, knowing that I might not have a life as long as everybody else. What did you imagine the future being like for me?
That's a great question, Alex. That is a great question. God, that is a really good question.
Put you on the spot now.
Firstly, I didn't imagine it to be this. I didn't imagine it to be for you to be 26, thriving as well as you are at the moment. I never imagined that we'd ever get to that point. You know, I imagined, I had a picture of a little girl that was going to spend a lot of time in hospital, that was going to get weaker and weaker, that was going to be kind of underweight, you know, not as kind of, because I mean that's a symptom of CF. Often is weight loss and not being able to absorb the food, and that was always a worry. And when you see you know, in the days where you have been ill and you've lost weight, then you get a visual reminder of what this disease is all about. You know, a lot of CF, it's what's happening on the inside, and you know, you can't always see the complexity of what's happening underneath the skin of a person with cystic fibrosis. So, you know, when you were really ill and you were losing weight, that's a real, you can't hide from that. You know, it's there, and you see it, and the cough, you know, and you're struggling to breathe. I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine what it must have been like for you, Alex. You know, fighting for breath, because that's what it gets to, isn't it? I think when you're really unwell with cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
And it's the most natural thing in the world is breathing. You know, again, we take that for granted. But when you can't breathe, oh my God, you know, and seeing somebody struggling to breathe and seeing somebody that you love, like I love you, is, you know, it's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. So I suppose, what did I imagine? I imagined, I had a picture of you in hospital, on oxygen, you know, very, very much kind of needing to put weight on, struggling. And I didn't imagine you being around, you know, forever, you know, for a dad. That's a really hard thing to consider. And then you think about, okay, so just one of the thought there actually is, how do you deal with it? How does a dad, how does a mum deal with a daughter or a son that's not well? And we all deal with it in different ways. And the way I've generally dealt with it, and I've struggled. I had quite some time off work when you were born, because I struggled with it. I had 2 or 3 months off work. I didn't realise what was going on there, but I just didn't feel like I could go to work. I don't know how you describe that, but I just couldn't deal with going to work, because I was just so upset with the kind of with what we've been presented with, the challenge we've been presented with. But I suppose what I was going on to say was, I deal with it by putting it to one side, you know, by blanking it out, which I do with most challenges. I'll put it to the back of my mind, and I can deal with it. But then, which is great when you're well, you know, when things are going great, you know. But when things go, so my mood's up there when you're well, because and I can put the prospect of what lies ahead out my mind, you know. But when you're unwell, then it all comes flooding back, and all those feelings of when you were born, and the worry and the concern, it all comes flooding back, and so your mood drops quite significantly, and that's when I start to worry, and that's when I get concerned. You know, that's when, you know, I'm ringing up, Alex, what's your oxygen levels? And you're telling me it's one thing, and it's not. I know it's not. It's about 10% less than it really is, you know, because you don't want to tell your mum and dad what your oxygen levels are, you know. So how you deal with it mentally is, we're all different, but that's how I've dealt with it. But very, very hard to deal with. And then, just to go back to your question, really, I suppose, then I'll be honest, I've thought about what life would be like without you. I mean, my God, how on earth could a parent carry on without a child? You know, and we've got friends who sadly have lost children younger than you under different circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, the torment they go through is, it's just unbearable. It really is. So, you know, I've even thought about what it would be like at the funeral. You know, I mean, how would I deal with being at my own daughter's funeral? You know, I mean, what would I say? You know, what, you just can't imagine it. You just can't imagine it. It's so I've thought about a lot of things, you know, and some are very, very hard to even speak about, you know, but that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that just with you saying age, it's funny like how my worries have changed over the years.
Right.
Because I used to worry, I think you touched on it a little bit. I used to not like family knowing that I was sick. So if I was unwell, I would try as much as I could to hide sort of that sickness and pretend that I wasn't as ill as I was, to protect people so that people weren't worried as much. And to go from that to now sort of, I've sort of thought that I might live maybe to 30s. But a lot of people with CF die between the ages of 20 and 30. So, I mean, COVID's probably put a bit of a damper on that. But I always said, when I turn 25, I want a big party because I want to celebrate that I've made it this far. Yeah. And then a few weeks ago, when I turned 26, I thought, God, I'm going to be 30 in 4 years. I mean, people have a bit of a wobble anyway, don't they, about turning 30, but just the actual knowing that I'll live till 30 now, and sort of normal worries about the future, thinking, God, I need a proper career now, and I need things that normal people plan for that I just hadn't, because I thought, well, I'm sort of not going to make it to an age where that's going to be a problem. So I'm not worried about it. And yeah, now thinking, God, I'm going to be 30 and what am I going to do with my future? And it's all good worries to have,
So it's a nice problem to have. But I think psychologically, I remember you saying that you were struggling with, because you never thought, you never needed to plan, really. And so now you can plan, you know, because you're on a drug that, you know, it's not quite a cure, is it really? But it's certainly taken away a lot of the kind of, the kind of symptoms of cystic fibrosis. Yeah. So, but that's, you kind of, your whole outlook has changed, hasn't it, really, which is incredible, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, the future's definitely looking bright. My last question was about the new drug. Anyway, I know you've touched on it a little bit.
Sorry.
So did you ever imagine that there would be a drug as good as Kaftrio?
I think I did. Yeah, I did, because I think if we look at the machine that's behind cystic fibrosis, the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, and we've got, you know, again, we have to thank the people involved in that organisation. And, you know, one of the people I always think a lot about is Dr. Keith Brownlee, who was your consultant. He's just such an inspirational person, and he was one of the people that looked after you, Alex, when you were born and involved with cystic fibrosis at St James's. And he's now involved in the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, and he's retired from the front line, and he's involved in the trust. So, you know, I think with the kind of machine that is behind cystic fibrosis, and I'm a big believer in technology and advancement of technology, and I think I was always kind of confident that they would come up with a cure, or as good as a cure. My worry was when, you know, and I didn't want it to be after my little daughter, you know, was not around anymore. So I am so thrilled. I'm so pleased. The most exciting news I've ever had since you and Ben were born, if I'm honest, was, you know, the news that you gave us, which would there's a new drug. I'm on it, and you tell us what the impact of that drug was after taking it for 24 hours, 48 hours. So yeah, I'll let you say that, but you know, I was confident that there would be a cure, but I just didn't know when, and I was worried that we'd miss the boat. And again, it makes me really sad thinking about the people that didn't. It didn't arrive in time for. And we have to kind of think about those people and their families. But Alex, let me ask you the question. You know, having taken the new drug, which is, what's it called, Trikafta, or what's it called?
So in Americans call it Trikafta. In the UK, it's Kaftrio.
Kaftrio, okay.
Yeah. So I've always said there'll be a cure, but it won't be in my lifetime.
Wow.
And whether that was just to mentally deal with it, I don't know. But I'd always thought that there definitely will be something, but I don't think it'll be in my lifetime. And there was a lot of build up because, I mean, Americans got the drug before us.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of hype on Facebook, social media about how good this drug was. And I mean, as much as I wanted to get excited about it, it was really hard because, like I've said, it doesn't work for everybody. And I mean, this drug works for, I think it's like 90% of the CF population. But there is a few that have different genes that it still doesn't work for. But I was excited about it and the possibility, but there was a bit of me that thought, don't get too excited because it might not work. But I remember getting the drug, and I actually got the drug on the anniversary of Tom's death, which was a little sign to me that he was up there looking down, and that because all the days of the year, it was that day. So that was a little sign from above for me. And within sort of 12...
Just explain who Tom is, because people might not know who Tom is. Sorry, Alex.
So Tom is a young lad. We've talked about Chris, Michelle, and Tom's sisters, Georgia and Sophie. Tom was a young lad who had CF. We were actually the only 2 CF people at St. John Fisher's School. And he died at 15, which is too young, God. Too young. And I think, look at all the extra years that I've had. But yeah, he was too sick, and unfortunately he died. And we have mentioned them along the way. But yeah, on the anniversary of his death, that's when I got the new drug.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, so within 24 to 36 hours sort of starting the drug, my body started to change. So one of the main problems with CF is sticky mucus just through the entire body. So my body started to clear all the nasty, horrible stuff that had been clogging it up. Within probably 3 or 4 days, I just stopped coughing, which it's insane. And I mean, now coughing was part of my everyday life. As soon as I got up, any exercise, anything that physically made me a little bit out of breath, I would cough. And it's a burden really to cough. I mean, people, when they get a cold and they cough for 2 weeks and they're like, oh, I'm exhausted. But that was an everyday reality. Like, it was just something that I've always dealt with. I've always coughed. And now if I cough, I'm sort of a bit shocked about it, which is really odd to go from coughing every day to now sort of never coughing. But it's just improved so much of my life. I mean, I've not really had too many problems with my weight over the years, but I've sort of gone the other way now, and they've said, Alex, you have to watch your diet. 25 years of being told you need to eat the fat, you need to eat pizza, you need to gain weight. 25 years of that's habits are hard to sort of change. It's such a good problem to have, because the drug, I never imagined that it would be as good as it was. Yeah, it really, so many changes, and just the future. I mean, the future's been a little bit tainted just with COVID, because obviously I started the drug in COVID. I've not experienced all the things that I will be able to now. But I could never have imagined that this drug would do so much. And even mentally, sort of my mental state now, not having to worry about the things that I did before, it's just relieved so much pressure off me, which I sort of didn't realise that I had. Even sort of going from, I started September last year, going from then to now, I've not had 1 dose of antibiotics, not 1 hospital stay, which, I mean, hospital stays for me were every 2 or 3 months, and I used to give home antibiotics probably every 2 months. It was just a normal sort of thing for me, and to go 6 months without needing anything is incredible. crazy.
Amazing, Alex. It really is. It is amazing. You're amazing, and the people that have created this are amazing. You know, the people that have done the research and delivered it, amazing people that we have to be thankful for, don't we? I think, and grateful for. Yeah,
definitely. Right. Hopefully this video reaches someone that's done some research or some testing or something.
Let's make it happen, Alex. Let's make it happen. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. So I think this was you interviewing me now, wasn't it? I think so. I think what we're going to try and do, we'll see what the feedback is on this, but I think we're thinking of maybe breaking things down a little bit and doing little bite-sized videos on different parts of your life and your thoughts. That'll be we're going to do that moving forward. So
yeah, just for other people that have sort of, maybe not even with conditions like this, but for other people that have struggled, to know that people are talking about it, people have been through it.
Sure.
I feel like someone somewhere it will help, and if it helps one person, then we've done a good job.
Perfect. Okay, right, great. Well, thanks for interviewing me and asking the
Thank you for being interviewed.
questions. Right, okay.